undeniable proof that Andy Stanley is actually LGBT affirming. Let's talk about it here on All Things Theology.
All things theology, all things theology. We chop it up properly without an apology. Gotta give that theology to God, hallowed be, cause this is how we do it at All Things Theology.
Yo, grace and peace, and welcome back to an episode of All Things Theology, where this is your host, K-Dub, and today, again, like I said, we're going to provide undeniable, irrefutable, you get my point. We're going to provide evidence that Andy Stanley is absolutely LGBTQ affirming, and that the conference, though that might not have been the intended goal, that was the end result. But again, I want to play a clip of him saying that, just a way of reminder that this was not about, the conference was not about being LGBT affirming. Let's play that clip.
The problem is, or a big part of the problem is, the critics of the conference, they never took time to discover the actual purpose of the Unconditional Conference. The story became Andy Stanley is hosting a gay affirming conference at North Point Community Church. And many of you saw bits and pieces and podcasts and articles. And so, of course, since you didn't know anything about the conference, you didn't know anything about our history in this space, of course some of you were confused. Some of you were, and some of you are mad and angry.
And so that's him saying, hey, look, the critics are saying that this was supposed to be a LGBTQ affirming conference, but that's not right. I affirm biblical marriage. We'll get to that a little later. But why am I doing this video? What is the irrefutable proof that I believe I have that demonstrates my case? Well, the irrefutable proof is I'm going to play a video of two people that you may want to know about. In regards to this conversation, that is the New Evangelicals, hosted by Tim and Zach Lambert, who is pastor of a church in Austin, Texas. Why would I mention these these two gentlemen about this conversation? Well, they are two LGBTQ affirming people, for lack of better words, and they believe that the conference was LGBTQ affirming. We'll get to some of the nuances they would even make. But imagine, right? I host a conference intended to, reach out to drunkards. And a lot of the pushback I get is, hey, this was actually a drunk affirming conference. And I say, no, it wasn't. And then two drunkards come out and say, hey, or two drunk affirming people come out and say, hey, it definitely was. It will at least cause you to pause and be like, maybe there's more to this. What I'm going to do is play a large section and provide my agreement in much of this. Let me actually say some things about Tim. Though we're on the polar opposites when it comes to this conversation, I do respect him as someone who is honest. I have no reason to believe he was lying about anything he said in this, this interview with Zach. I like him. He's been cordial with me. We've had sharp disagreements. Tim, that's the only nice thing I'm going to say about you. I reached out to him prior to this video and told him I was going to do this, and he was cool. Said, "Hey, cool." Said I'll say some nice things about him. So that's it. That's all you're going to get from me. But let me play this video. We're going to provide commentary as needed.
Of course, when we get down to it, the point here is not to, make fun of or mock people for who they are. It's all about just really responding to their critiques and trying to engage the ideas and what they're promoting. So our intent is never to dehumanize. Of course, we all like to have a little bit of fun here and there, but in all seriousness, the whole point of what we're trying to do is just to expose the different perspective that a lot of us have come out of, what they're still advocating for. And also in this podcast, we're trying to talk about what's going on here with this Unconditional Conference, and what does it mean, and what do we do with it? And is this a sign of hope, or is it another one of those, wow, looked really great, but turns out it was just what we all suspected? So here's what we're going to do. Zach, I'm thinking, why don't we first talk about just our brief experience at the conference briefly, and then we'll kind of intro some of the clips that we're going to respond to, and then we'll go from there. So do you want to go first? I would just love to know your thoughts. You were at the Unconditional Conference with me. We hung out a lot with some other amazing people. What was your takeaway?
And this is going to be Zach Lambert. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. Giving his experience. Again, I want you to pay attention to what he's saying. The goal in this video is not to attack these two men here. The goal is the goal is to really show how Andy Stanley, I believe, is not actually being as forthright with what he's saying. Oh, this is not an LGBTQ affirming conference. This is, that's what he's saying. Oh, I affirm biblical marriage, right? Well, again, as I was talking to a friend recently, the issue is, do you affirm the biblical marriage alone, right? That's the issue. Yeah, a lot of people say, yeah, man and woman can get married, but do you affirm that alone? That's really a fundamental issue when it comes to a lot of issues. The word alone is a good word, qualifying word. But again, the goal isn't to attack them, but really to address their statements in light of some things we've talked about in the past here on this show. So let's get it.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts of the conference was when you and I saw each other in person for the first time down a long hallway. And, it was a meet cute right from a movie with a big hug at the end. Because we've been friends online for a while. But it was good to meet in person and hang out a little bit.
It's always good.
But in all seriousness, I chose to go to this conference months ago when I saw it released, purely out of curiosity. It felt like this is going to be a big thing. Obviously, Andy is a mega platform, senior pastor of a mega evangelical church and a network of churches that is massive. A network of churches that we were actually a part of in 2019. Our church in Austin was a part of the North Point Greater Network. And so I've been around Andy for many years. And it just felt like North Point hosting this conference that seems affirming and inclusive and like it's going to be a real help in the movement toward full LGBTQ plus inclusion in the church.
Now, I stop it there to say that's some good, background from his perspective as a affirming person. Notice, he buys his ticket to the conference, right? He's kind of like curious more so than like dogmatically, yes, this is affirming, but also hopeful that it is based on, I'm assuming, some things that he heard, prior to this or around that time. And I hope I'm not, adding to his words. I'm actually trying to be fair to them, also as well as Andy as well. But I think this is good background that he's providing about this conference. Again, as someone who affirms LGBTQ ideology
in the world. It was like, I just have to be there. It felt like something that I had to be at. And so that's why I bought the ticket. And when it happened, bought the ticket back in the day, it was like not a big deal. People were not really talking about it. It was only until about a month before that it started.
Now, I'm nobody in this conversation essentially, and I'm not saying I was the only one, but there were people talking about it. And I agree that it wasn't a big deal. But I have videos going back to early February and late January where I'm talking about this conference and I'm kind of raising my eyebrow at some of the things I'm seeing it. But I'm not saying that to say, oh no, you don't know what you're talking about. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that, right? Because I don't think Zach Lambert knows me. I think we've had maybe two conversations. I've talked more with Tim, but yeah.
Really popping off with the Moeller article and other things that started happening. The conference ends up being sold out. 100 people get turned away because they are over capacity. It was just incredible. But the actual experience of the conference, I went in, I'll be honest, very skeptical. I've been in evangelical spaces my entire life prior to planting our church. And most of these spaces are pretty bait and switch, right? Yeah. I just got invited to another conference similarly in San Antonio that is all like, we got to learn how to love LGBTQ plus people in the church. And we've done a bad job and all the things. And then it's like 2 clicks to get to their page where they say, this is, we are not promoting full inclusion of LGBTQ plus people in the church. We believe this, we believe that. And so it's under this veneer of exclusion, but it has this, front-facing idea that like really it's going to be inclusive and really it's going to be affirming. That was my understanding. That's what I thought was going to happen at this conference. And to be candid, it was the exact opposite. Like
now, just to comment on some of the things. Right, he goes to the conference. He's he's skeptical about it because, right, in his experience, what he's seen with these kind of same kind of conferences has been the kind of bait and switch. What he's talking about. Let me just say this from my perspective: churches should not do this. They shouldn't offer this bait and switch. Like, yeah, we're all about accepting, and then they tell you when you get there, well, yeah, not really. Yeah, that's a form of dishonesty, and I'm pretty sure they would agree with me there. But notice he's going to the conference, it's kind of really expecting kind of the same thing he's experienced, only he says it was totally the opposite. What is he talking about? Totally the opposite. He's saying it was not this kind of bait and switch. Rather, it was actually very affirming, and he's going to elaborate some more on that. But again, it's what I've been saying this whole time. Though I wasn't there, I looked at some of the speakers that were there, and every but one of them was gay affirming. And Zach's going to echo my sentiment, so it's not something I'm just making up.
Single part of the conference from the moment we walked in, and there are LGBTQ plus folks, gay and trans folks, holding the door open, welcoming, and leadership.
Notice in leadership, serving at the conference, they have LGBTQ plus, I'm assuming, LGBTQ people in leadership and serving at the conference itself. So again, I my whole thing is for Andy. I just wish he would just come out and just say, yeah, okay, guys, you caught me, right? I am affirming on this issue, right? I have moved away from, right, this is me talking, I have moved away from a biblical sexuality, and I am now embracing things that I once claimed to believe, right? I just wish he would be more honest. I mean, that would just be more helpful, but rather we get a lot of vagueness and kind of like eyebrow raising, sentences he makes. But again, they're going to go on and talk about some of those things.
Every speaker that I heard was affirming. Every book that was being sold was affirming.
Notice, so I don't mean to cut him off so much, but every speaker there was affirming. And every book sold there was affirming. Now, I didn't know that last part, but I did say that about because I looked up every speaker that was there. I just typed in their name and something like LGBT and found out that they were affirming. It wasn't that hard to find. But they were also selling materials and offering an apologetic at the conference for this issue, for the affirming issue, and showing people how to defend these things and promoting these things. So again, Andy needs to be more honest and say, well, the critics are saying, well, it's not us just saying, it's what was done at the conference, what was said, who you invited. So, yeah.
Every breakout, there was just kind of this assumption that we are all here to fully support and fully include and affirm our LGBTQ plus kids and neighbors and church.
Notice again, though I disagree fundamentally with these two men here, they're echoing what I said. So we're in agreement, right, for different reasons, obviously, but we're in agreement that this was an LGBTQ conference. And notice what he kind of said something I said in a similar video, that the assumption going into this conference was that it's affirming. I said the same thing.
Members and all of that stuff. And while it was purely focused on helping parents with their LGBTQ plus kids, it really broadened to how do we help pastors that pastor LGBTQ plus people, and how do we do some repentance for the harm we've done to LGBTQ plus people. And that was a really beautiful part of it too.
Notice even, not only affirming, but I guess, changing your mind about and repenting towards, I guess, how you've, harmed them. And by harm, it's, not affirming their lifestyle, which Tim's going to pretty much echo that sentiment here in a second. But very interesting language, right?
I walked away from the conference massively encouraged. And I'd love to hear your take. What did you think?
We'll hear Tim in a second. But notice, as Zach, who is a LGBT affirming pastor down in Austin, right? And I totally reject that. He was encouraged for the conference. So that says a lot about this conference and, its intended purposes, or at least its intended result, and things like that. And so again, it's what I've been saying, and sometimes I feel like I'm repeating myself in saying that this unequivocally was an LGBTQ conference. So let's hear from Tim.
Yeah, I mean that, I reminded myself, and people watching this, people listening to it on the podcast when we post it later, they're probably way ahead of where, even this conference might be as far as like how they think about these things. And then
Now, to, I guess, flesh out what Tim is saying is, though the conference was affirming, it wasn't as fully affirming, right? So to put it in maybe some of our language, right, it'd be like somebody being a 3-point Calvinist, right? And then you're like, okay, you're good, but you got some more, progression to make. I think that's kind of what Tim is saying right there, that though it is affirming, there still needs work to be done. And so hopefully I'm being fair with Tim and understanding him right. But I think that's what he said. I think he would agree.
and that's totally fair, and that's where I'm at too. Like I'm with all of you. Like, hey, why are we even having these conferences? Like, this should be a no-brainer, But at the same time, and we talk about this a lot, if we're going to push things forward, we have to start somewhere, and we have to, blow on the sparks that we can find to hopefully start that kindling, right? And so for me, yes, this conference, first off, was not designed for me. So I kept that in mind. It was designed for parents who really grew up or maybe were part of evangelical spaces that would tell them that if their kid ever comes out, the only option is to say, well, I love you, but I can never affirm what you do or who you are ultimately because of the Bible.
And maybe I will push back just a little bit here for Tim. Yeah, I mean, if we believe it is sin, we regard it as sin, as the Bible says. 1 Corinthians 6. Quote unquote clobber passages. Just like any sinner, right? If someone was involved in adultery, they just wanted to live an unrepentant lifestyle of adultery, or whatever the sin, they want to live this unrepentant, deviant lifestyle headlong into it, without any kind of accountability. That's the only, we would say that. I would say the same thing. So I don't treat homosexuals any different in that regard to any other sinner. Matter of fact, my church has been involved in, church discipline cases, and not one of them has been for homosexuality. My point being is, when it comes to any sin, we would not to want to be, partial and just say, well, only if you do this is where we would treat you differently. But hopefully you get my point.
That's a very nice way of putting a blunt way of putting it. People like, just other people in this space who maybe approach or advocate for like a third way. They'll say it in a much nicer, it sounds more loving way, but the fruit is the same.
And I actually agree with Tim. That's why I just affirm the more blunt way. But you do have a lot of these churches who are like, they're just trying to be, I guess, politically correct about it, but they actually mean what I mean. But they're just trying to say, we'll still love you. And it sounds like they're actually affirming you, but they're really not. So, again.
No, I'm not. I don't think they would ever attend their kid's wedding or anything like that, right? Or support them transitioning at some point if it was the right move between them and their doctors. But they would say, well, I'm doing this because I love you. So for those people who, and also those who listen to maybe more of the political rhetoric, right, and just hear the term like groomer and that the LGBTQ mind virus is taking over kids, they need some baby steps. They need some places to start that would say, we get it. You're scared, right? You're concerned. You're worried for your kid. We understand that. Okay, we do. Here are some ways to think about this that would really help you better love your child, that will better affirm who they are, that will actually promote your relationship with them. Because one of the strongest, I think, reasons to have this approach is that the fruit of the other approach usually leads to a very unhealthy relationship. Statistically, LGBTQ folks, their risk of serious mental health and ideation of trying to unalive themselves goes up when the relationship is strained or they're going to a non-affirming church.
I would argue this is the case with any sin that someone's, the church is saying, no, we do not support this. I mean, think about all those who want divorce. They're unjustifiable divorce. The church says no, otherwise you're going to be placed on church discipline. That causes some strain, mental health. That causes a lot of emotions and things like that. And so I would argue that's not a reason necessarily to I guess say, well, therefore we should affirm these. But I think what Tim is arguing to go something what he previously said, that this conference is the baby step for many people. I think he actually says something about that in a second. So let's listen.
So the data is pretty clear that like that reality of,
And I would argue the Bible's clear though, but I'm not trying to be as pushy on Tim, but sometimes I can't help myself.
hey, we love you, but does a lot of harm. And so this conference was not about that. This conference was pretty much saying, hey, here are things you should and should not do. Here are ways to approach it. Also, parents, we can hold space for you. We can.
But I do appreciate Tim's honesty. He's saying, no, this conference was not one of those, hey, we love you, but conferences. It seems what he's saying, if I'm interpreting him rightly, that this is one of those conferences from the presupposition saying, no, we accept you, who you are. We're affirming you. We're affirming your lifestyle. Which again, I was saying that's what this is. Yeah, it absolutely is. We even read some, some quotes from David Gushee and things like that. And so
let you kind of grieve and vent for you because this is so new. But also, they kind of maybe I didn't hear it put this bluntly, but they kind of hinted like, even though it's not maybe what you planned, it's still actually a beautiful, wonderful life that you can have with your children. And that could be a great thing. So it gave, I think, parents a lot of hope. And so that was the vibe I got from it too. One of my favorite, I don't want to go into serious details because it was a private event and I want to respect people's ethical boundaries. But
now, right here, they're actually going to, Zach and Tim are kind of going to give two things that happened at the conference, or their experiences of the conference, which I found it very interesting. So let's hear Tim's experience at the conference first.
There were just quite a few sessions I sat in on, I'll say, that were like, yes, and also gave me great language for like understanding the different ways that like the church and culture has seen some of these issues, right? So I was like you, Zach.
I would bet he would be talking about David Gushee. If I had to just ask him off the record, which lecture are you talking about? I bet he would say David Gushee's, because I think I know what he's referring to, because some of that stuff has gotten out. But that's just me.
I was pretty freaking encouraged. There were people there. There were some. Yeah, it was a very good event, and I could tell that the parents who were there got there because they were either ahead of like where you and I are, or they were brand new and they were really scared. They were terrified, and they did.
So from Tim, he's saying there were two kind of parents there. Either people who were already just right where they are, just full out affirming, like there's no hesitation, no doubt in their mind, so to speak, or people who were scared, but they seem to be. This is me adding to his words, but I think I'm understanding him right. Or they were moving in that direction, again, of being LGBTQ affirmed, but they're scared, they're hesitant, they're still got the little stains of evangelicalism in them, right? So that seems to be what he was saying there.
You can tell that they didn't want to lose the relationship with their kids, but also the way that they've been taught about the Bible and the way that they've been taught to view their kids now because of the church, you can tell was at total odds. And they were here to try and find a better path forward. And I think that the event organizers did a really good job with that, frankly.
Absolutely. I mean, they were.
Now, again, Zach's about to share, and I found his actually statements even more interesting than what Tim just said. We got a few minutes here, and but let's hear from Zach here.
Two things that really stood out to me that were surprising. As I said, I went in pretty much assuming it was going to be a typical evangelical bait and switch. But the first thing that stood out is that from like moment one, which there was...
Guys, listen to this. This actually blew my mind, but let's listen.
An opening song. Again, I won't get into a ton of details, but I think this is fine. There was an opening song at the very beginning of the conference. That was the first thing, opening song. And the song was essentially about the LGBTQ plus experience in the church, how harmful it has been and how we need to do better. The lighting behind it was rainbow, and the lyrics on the screen were moving in between the lyrics of the song and statistics about the harm that LGBTQ plus people have experienced in the church and in Christian circles. I mean, that was moment one.
Okay, so he walks into the church, North Point Community Church, Andy Stanley's church, and moment one, he says, moment one of the conference, what he walks into, right? I guess they're doing some kind, some worship, right? As they walk in, to inaugurate the conference, and the first song was an LGBTQ affirming song of a repentance, so to speak, and how the church has done them wrong. And in that, the background was a rainbow colors, right, to indicate, right, pride, LGBTQ, etc. The logo, right, all that, along with statistics of all these matters. Now, again, if the opening scene of the conference is an LGBTQ affirming song and opening and kind of an inauguration, again, if it's further substantiating my point, even from these people who, I mean, we're disagreeing, we would disagree on the issue, but I have no reason to believe that they're lying about this, right? Again, they believe that it was LGBTQ affirming conference. So we'll finish it out with just a little bit more.
The conference. And I was just like, I couldn't believe it.
Right.
So that stuck out to me massively. The other thing was that every parent story that was, that I heard, not just around the tables, but up on the stages, was our kid came out. I was essentially not great. I threw Bible verses at them. I gave them the old script. I did a bad job and I repent. I'm sorry for that. And we are now doing a better job. And look, here's my...
Notice what was insufficient, right? The Bible, now we're not going to do all that. Rather, I'm sorry for even doing that, doing the whole Bible thing. And then now there was a move to being more affirming. Now, again, this not just from, people in the audience, but again, from Zach's statements, people on the stage, right? Speakers, leaders, teachers presented there. Now, they didn't get into this per se, but I would be very curious on what Andy, I would love to see Andy's session or his, no, he didn't speak, but I think he did an interview. Now, there have been quotes that I've seen from that, but obviously I would love to see him say it myself from a video. Here's my opinion. I don't think we'll ever see any of these sessions see the light of day. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is my, I don't think we'll ever see those. And so we'll just have to go from words of like people who were there.
Son and his husband at our family Christmas dinner. Look at this picture. How great is that?
Yeah.
So it was like explicitly, we messed up when we did it the old way. Now we're doing it the new way. And it's been massively better, more Christ-like and all of that. And then the third thing, the last thing.
Now, again, see the old way, right? AKA the Bible, right? Teaching what the Bible says, throwing Bible verses, right? As he said, but now we're doing it a new way, all I can think about is that song, God is doing a new thing, right? Very interesting, right? But
was that a lot of these conferences are straight people talking about queer people, right?
Yes. Listen to this.
But that's not what this was. There were multiple queer people in queer relationships who were platformed at the highest stage. We went to a breakout together that was literally 5 LGBTQ plus people on a stage. They were the only ones on the stage just sharing their stories, completely in leadership. And that was one of the most packed breakouts of the whole time. And so it was not just people talking about LGBTQ plus people. It was LGBTQ plus people, most of them in queer relationships, platformed in a way that was really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
And so, right, from what he said at the conference, it wasn't just, straight people talking about LGBTQ people, but actually LGBTQ plus people were platformed, put in a place of leadership and speaking on these issues. And so again, at Andy's church, the conference was held at his church, in his church, this is happening. And so Andy can, give lip service to holding to biblical marriage. But again, do you believe that alone? I don't believe Andy does. Why? Because of the conference itself was platforming. It was, as they said, was very encouraging from an LGBTQ plus perspective. And so why would I believe that Andy actually still holds to biblical marriage alone when you have other people who are on, denying what I'm saying? Well, I would argue denying what the Bible says. And again, the video is not to actually establish that. I've done numerous videos on that. You can check that out. But again, he can give lip service to this all day long. But I will, if Andy believes these things, I think he should be more forthright. And I think even Tim and Zach may agree with. Maybe they don't. Maybe they won't. But this is me, so I'll speak for myself. I think he should be just say, "Hey, look, yes, I had this at my church. I didn't, intervene in any of this, even though it was all this affirming. And yeah, I am." Affirming these issues. I think he should just come out and say it. But again, I just wanted to document this just to even provide further evidence for you, man. It is getting sad for Andy Stanley, and I agree with Al Mohler that the train has left the station. Unfortunately, Andy is not on it. Hope you guys enjoy this video. Till the next time, grace and peace. Yo, grace and peace. Thank you for watching another episode of All Things Theology. If you enjoyed what you heard today, go and give me a like. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell. I promise to give you weekly videos, lives, interactions, exposing false teachers, sharing with you, the viewer, my theological beliefs, things about the culture and the Bible. So if you're here for that, come on and join us.